Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is our co-host Richie Schneiderite. Richie, we're in game week. This is the Indiana preview. We're going to have Keegan Nickoson of TheHoosier, the Indiana rival site, join us shortly to kind of go over everything regarding the Hoosiers. But first, this podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all your sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. You can head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus of your first deposit. Make sure you use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, I had a bad beat yesterday. The Yankees, man. I love that they won. It was great. But I just needed one hit out of Harrison Bader, and I hit for 550, 6-leg parlay. It fell apart.
That sucks.
Just fell apart.
I had a basketball parlay fall apart, too, last night. I hit every leg of player ends of it, but the Sixers lost. So
yeah, that's...
It didn't really matter, because I had Sixers money line as one leg, so...
Darn, hate to see it.
Tough days.
Anyway, we're also sponsored by Adam Goldman. He's the franchise coach. If you're trying to change your life up and kind of change careers and you're tired of doing that desk job all day, every day, hit up Adam. He's a franchise veteran. Franchise coach is his nickname. He kind of sets you up with basically starting any kind of franchise you want, whether it be a restaurant or, I don't even know, a restaurant, urgent care, like I said the other day, or something else like that. But Adam's a Night Report member, Scarlet Night fan, and a franchise veteran for over a decade. So hit him up, 844-800-3726 or franchisecoach.net. And welcome to the pod, Keegan.
Thanks for having me, guys. Sorry about those technical difficulties, and I'm a Safari guy, so this Chrome stuff's weird.
Nah, you're all good.
It's all good.
So our teams kind of have a bit of a look in the mirror of each other. We both started 3-0 and then have lost every game since. We both had a pretty surprising week one upset. So tell us a little bit about just high level, what's this Indiana football team look like and what we should kind of be on the lookout for this weekend?
That's a very loaded question. What does this Indiana football team look like? I think it's a better team than last year overall, and I think that's kind of an undeniable statement. And I think a lot of Indiana fans would agree with that, just from a pure talent perspective. A lot of better quarterback play, a more creative offensive coordinator, but I mean that would probably be a widely debated topic. And an offensive team that moves, I think, at the second fastest pace in the country. I think the last time I checked, right behind Texas Tech. Been struggling with a lot of injuries, lost a captain and a tackle week one in Matt Bedford, so that was a big hit. And then going through a position coach change after Darren Hiller, the offensive line coach, was fired 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. So it's been a rocky road lately, and I think the dark cloud that was last season is kind of starting to inch its way towards Bloomington, and I think a lot of people are getting really scared about that. So.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about that because Tom Allen, he had some down years to start. Not terrible. He had 2 straight 5-7 seasons, and then seemed to really elevate the program. He had them ranked in the last 3 seasons at different points. He went 8-5 in 2019. He had that Cinderella year in 2020 where Michael Penix was a Heisman frontrunner. But it seems like ever since Penix got hurt, this program has kind of completely fallen off. Would you say that's kind of accurate?
That's very accurate. Last season was pitiful in a lot of people's eyes, and I think if the track that they're on this season continues and they don't at least finish 5-7, that the talk of him potentially being on the hot seat is going to intensify. And I think the athletic department and the AD is going to have a serious conversation and look in the mirror about the future of this football program. So
interesting. I want to talk a little bit more about that offense. Connor Bazelak, obviously transferred from Missouri. How big has he been for Walt Bell and I guess this offense overall? Because it seems like Indiana's putting up pretty solid numbers, at least.
Yeah, he's been really good. Definitely a game manager. And he has a pretty decent arm. But the thing that's helped him most is the weapons that he gets to use. Emory Simmons comes in, veteran from North Carolina, and he's had a really big impact. And then Cam Camper, who absolutely no one knew about from Trinity Valley Community College out of Texas, transferred in, and he's been, I think, a top 5, top 10 receiver in the Big Ten throughout the whole season in terms of receptions and yards. And then you have DJ Matthews, who has just been kind of this team's rock offensively for the past 2 seasons, last season before he got hurt, and I think it was week 4. Just a really dynamic guy, really fast, really good route runner. And so they've used him a lot. But the thing that really sticks out about Bezlak, and the thing that keeps people doubting him is how much he uses his running backs out of the backfield. It feels like he relies a lot on Josh Henderson and Sean Shivers and Jalen Lucas for those safety valves to kind of just dump off for them and keep those quick passes going and keep moving down the field. So I want to see more of him trying to stretch it down the field, I think, and try to connect with Camper and Matthews. But we saw against Michigan, they targeted the running backs 9 times out of the backfield for 62 yards. And then Harbaugh goes in the locker room and says, okay, well, we're just going to not let them do that. And then they had, I think, 29 yards of offense in the second half. So it's been really susceptible to quality adjustments by the opposing teams, but he's definitely been better than what we saw last season, and especially behind the shoddy offensive line play that they've had. I'm honestly really surprised he's healthy and kind of still producing at a quality rate.
Yeah, I like to go through each team's PFF grades for every single position before I kind of talk to somebody, and they're not like the end all be all, but your guys' offensive line looks like it's really struggling this year. It looks like I looked at the stats. I think you're 108th in sacks allowed. Your center is the lowest ranked center in all of PFF this year. And I think you have one starter that's got above a 60 grade. Would you say those metrics are fairly accurate for where your offensive line is right now?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm honestly surprised that the quality true freshmen that they brought in haven't gotten more of a role, just to see, it's so bad. It can't really get worse, so let's throw them out there and see what happens. But Parker Hanna comes in from an FCS program in Texas Western, I think it was. And he gets thrown to the Flames to start. And then Caleb Murphy had a decent game in his first week when Zach Carpenter went down with a thumb injury. And then there was this whole story about he's a walk-on. He forced his way onto the roster. He's a really motivated guy. And it was all really nice to hear. But then you see him against Cincinnati and he's getting blown off the ball, just getting pushed into the quarterback basically every play. So all of that happy talk and all of the feel-good talk really went away. And then it was, okay, well, Connor Bazek has no chance. And then it's talk of, can this offensive line keep up with how many plays a game? 82 plays a game or something like that, which is second fastest in the country. So the question marks start to get thrown around. And then obviously if you don't have an offensive line, you're not going to be able to do anything in the Big Ten with how athletic and how talented these guys are.
Rutgers has definitely found that out the hard way over the past, 7 or 8 years. So totally understand where you're coming from there. But I did have another question about all the players you basically mentioned so far have been portal entries to Indiana in the last year or two. Would you say that Tom Allen's had a trouble with either development or keeping guys in the program? Why do you guys have basically every starter that you mentioned so far as portal additions?
Well, I think that's an interesting question because after last season, especially with the 2021 recruiting class and a season of they almost beat Ohio State during COVID, and it was a really good season. And then you go 2-10, you're expecting a lot of those guys to decommit, and surprisingly, very few of them did. The running back at LaSalle High School in Cincinnati, who was a 4-star, he decided to go to Notre Dame and follow Dylan McCullough there. But very few of the recruits decommitted, but there were a lot of portal entries from Indiana, from kind of some offensive skill players. And then losing Micah McFadden opened holes in the linebacker corps, so we got multiple linebackers to commit to Indiana out of the portal. But I think it's more of just he wants veteran guys in to kind of help develop those freshmen. Like Deshaun McCullough is having an amazing season. I think he was first team all true freshman and mid-season from multiple outlets. But yeah, he's definitely leaning on the veteran presence, and especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think four of the biggest skill players that we have are transfers, and Emery Simmons, Sean Shivers, Josh Henderson, and Cam Camper. But yeah, he's really, really been counting on them a lot.
So I want to talk about the defense a lot. You just mentioned McCullough. He's got 4 sacks as a true freshman, which is crazy good, mind you. I will say, play devil's advocate here. They're against Idaho and Nebraska, like some pretty shitty offensive lines. But I want to talk about the defense overall. Like, you guys have a ton of sacks. Like, what's the issue then? Like, is it just like the secondary is just not putting up, or?
The issue it's been 2 things that have really screamed out to me. McCullough's not playing near enough because they don't want just to throw a true freshman at the Flames. So he goes in on third down a lot, and the amount of plays he makes on third down in big play situations is huge. The lack of communication in the defensive backfield and players not living up to their potential has handicapped this team a lot. Tywone Mullen was a preseason All-American, and funny story, when they went up against UC, he gave up 185 yards and I think 3 touchdowns to Tyler Scott, UC's talented receiver. And Scott was an athlete coming out of high school and went on a recruiting trip to Indiana, and Tywone Mullen was actually his host. So he took him around the campus, showed him around the city, and then he gets burnt for almost 200 yards. But he's been a real disappointment. They were expecting a lot more out of him. And then him not gelling well with Jalen Williams, just a lack of communication. Jalen Williams has been hurt the last couple of weeks. And then just from a practical standpoint, they haven't been able to tackle anyone. I mean, you could see multiple times where they'd have 2-3 guys just right at the line of scrimmage to get a guy, and then makes one move, gets past them, gets a first down. So tackling's been really, really pitiful, and yeah, I think it's lack of communication tackling, and then not playing Deshaun McCullough enough, which I, in all honesty, can't really blame Tom Allen for that.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to that, too. I know, obviously, this is Chad Wilt's first year, and Rutgers fans are kind of familiar with him because I think I actually put him on one of the D-line coach hot boards like a couple years back when he was in Army. Yeah. But this is his first year as a coordinator. How much of this is kind of on him as well? Like, are fans pissed at him kind of a little bit?
No, because Tom Allen is actually calling the plays on defense, and Chad Wilt is kind of his right-hand man. So, which made it a questionable hire because they had a press conference in Assembly Hall before a basketball game to introduce Will. And one of the first things Tom Allen says is, I'm going to call the plays this year. Even though we're hiring him, I'm going to take over play calling. And
Weird.
No one has touted Tom Allen for his ability to manage a game. His ability to motivate, check. His ability to lead a team, check. But time management, clock management, managing the game, no one's complimented him on that. So it's almost like he made a hire for someone to maybe potentially take over play calling next season, but it was more of him to just, I want to take it over. I want someone who I can trust to lead a practice and support these guys emotionally during the game. So,
makes sense.
We kind of talked a lot about the negatives about Indiana. What does Indiana do well, both offensively and defensively?
Offensively and defensively, what do they do well? I think
this shouldn't be that hard.
You're going to make me think about this one. They're a really motivated team, and I think they really, really believe in each other. And I talked to Connor Bazelak during the press conference on Monday, and he said one of the things that makes this team different from last season is that this team, they know that they're good, and it's all just a matter of time before it clicks. They catch the ball very well. I think they run really good routes. Bazelak he's had some really bad moments. He's had some really bad throws, but I think the bulk of his performances have been pretty good, especially given, as I mentioned, the terrible, terrible offensive line play he's had to deal with. And then defensively, I think I try to point to Deshaun McCullough over and over again just because of how talented he is and how big of a difference he can make, especially coming on the field on third down. But that's a hard question. What do they do well?
I mean, just the fact that it's taking this long to even answer that is kind of an indictment on where you guys might be this season.
Yeah, it's also just the fact that they've never done one thing consistently, bad or good. I guess tackling would be the consistently bad thing. But I would say the main thing is just they try to stay in games. And I think, especially compared to last season, they've been in the game in the fourth quarter most weeks. So they just have to do a better job of keeping themselves in position, not having late turnovers, not collapsing on defense late in the game, and they should be able to pull out a couple more wins. I truly do think that.
Yeah, I noticed you guys were at the very bottom of the FBS in terms of time of possession. Would you say that's mainly because the offense can't string together drives or the defense can't stop anybody, or a little bit of both?
Well, time of possession is just a pure fact that they're not taking any time in between plays. And then...
Oh, yeah, you did say they were like the highest paced team.
I wrote about this once, and it's very true. But there's like feelings that you have when you're watching a football game of like maybe there's a big play against your team, and you're like, oh, there's got to be a flag. There's that 3-second feeling after there's like a pass interference where you think there might be a flag when a big play gets broken off. But Indiana has introduced me to the feeling of how is it already third down? It's been 15 seconds. Because they'll run for 2 yards, and then they'll throw a quick incompletion, and it'll be 3rd and 8. And you're like, well, this offense isn't good enough to have a chance. And they're just going to bring pressure on 3rd and 8, and they're going to sack you, or they're going to force an incompletion. So they truly, more than any football team I've ever seen in my life, get to 3rd down so quickly and then give themselves very little chance to string a drive together. And you're pulling at your hair thinking, if you could you could give them 5 more seconds in between each play, they could possibly catch their breath and try to block for you. And then you give your defense more time on the sidelines to get a break, and maybe they could perform better in tackle and not get beat so far downfield on explosive plays. So it's been crazy, and I just think it's just how fast they run. And I think when you watch the game this week, you'll understand what I'm saying when they get the 3rd down and you're like, oh, Rutgers has a chance here. Okay, that was quick.
So should they just like slow down, honestly? Or is this just like, is this a product of Walt Bell at the end of the day?
Yes. Yeah. He was very clear, and he's been clear all season that they want to go fast. And I think it might be a thing of they're trying to overcompensate for what they see as a lack of talent compared to other teams, which, I mean, if you're being honest, that's true. But not giving your defense a chance, especially when they've suffered through so many injuries, is what's really killing this team. And it's when you see games get out of hand very, very quickly when they were just in it like a possession ago. So
I think that's something that Shiano mentioned. I'm sure you've heard of this, but Rutgers fires its offensive coordinator after the Nebraska game. And one of the things he cited was, and he's very like savvy with about like what he actually says, but he was kind of talking about how there is some nuance to like running like a no huddle and kind of running the clock down in terms of the play clock. And I think he wasn't happy with how quickly they were running plays. It seemed like the guys didn't really have a great grasp of the no huddle system. So the insistence on going in no huddle constantly when it wasn't working was kind of mind-boggling to, I guess, him as well as amongst our fans. So we get the frustration as well of like, why are you guys rushing to get plays in when it's not working and you're just putting your defense back out in the field immediately? So we totally understand your frustration there as a fan and as covering the team. So Rutgers, you also might not know this, we haven't won a home Big Ten game since 2017. We are the rare home favorite here as well. It opened at Rutgers as a 2-point favorite. It's kind of grown to 3.5 now. What do you think? What's your prediction for how this game goes?
My prediction for how? Okay. It's a noon kick, correct?
It's a noon kick. Yep.
Okay, noon kick. Like that would have anything to do with what would actually happen. Why did they even ask that? I think Indiana will probably pull this one out, which I do want to ask you guys, what's your kind of take on the quarterback position right now? Because you guys aren't completely sure who's going to start.
It's a carousel. It's fun. It's fun to watch. They subbed in 3 quarterbacks in one series, and it's like, what the? fuck is going on?
So I think we need to add some caveats where I think Schiano, typically we call Schiano's first stint 1.0, Schiano 2.0 is the new improved whatever. So in Schiano 1.0, he was very heavy on the micromanaging. He would basically like give his marching orders to each assistant coach, all his coordinators, and they had to like follow the script that Schiano wanted. It seems like he gave his coordinators a lot more leeway the second time around. So I think he was allowing Sean Gleason, who was the old offensive coordinator, to kind of like do what he wanted with his personnel. So, he, I think, similarly saw the talent mismatch between a lot of the opponents. So they were trying to like put different quarterbacks in for different types of plays. So if a certain guy was in, you knew they were probably passing. If you saw another guy was in, you knew they were probably running. So that puts the offense at a very difficult position because the defense can kind of just like key up to those situations. So the new offensive coordinator was also the interim offensive coordinator and head coach when Chris Ash got fired in 2019. So he's done this before. I think he kind of goes to the basics. I think he does a lot of vanilla offensive schemes. I think he's going to try and keep the same guy in. I think, and this is just me totally guessing, if all three quarterbacks are healthy, Schiano thinks that they have a path to win games in the future. And I think, not in the future, this year. So I think that's why he fired Gleason, because I think he saw a couple games slip away. I think he sees an opportunity to win a few. So I lean towards they're going to go with the veteran, Noah Vedral, if he's healthy. So he hurt his wrist or his hand in the preseason, and his first game back throwing passes was against Nebraska, and they were saying how he couldn't really grip the football 100%. So that's why you saw the first few passes were really nice, and then as the game wore on, his hands started to fatigue, and the balls started kind of sailing or kind of hitting the dirt. So if I had to guess, I think we see a heavy dose of Noah Vedral. But who knows? This is an offensive coordinator who's trying to get this job long term as well. So he's got to win some games. The offense has to show some life under him. So I think we'll see some vanilla schemes and nothing super risky. I think we had this Johnny Langan package, who's our tight end who played high school football, and basically anytime he was lined up in the backfield, you knew he was just plowing right up the middle. He averaged less than 1 yard per carry against Big Ten opponents in that formation on like 9 attempts. So I think that's kind of off the table entirely. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Sam Brown. Yeah, our freshman running back who's been outstanding in limited snaps, but he's probably going to see a heavier workload as the season goes on. So circling back to this, I think we're going to see a different type of Rutgers offense than we've seen all year, with some continuity between drives, with not as much shuffling in and out. So we don't really know what that's going to look like, but it's not going to be as like maddening as why is this quarterback coming in now? We just had 2 completions in a row with the other guy, and
they're averaging like 1 offensive touchdown per game. It can't get worse. It's bad. It's really bad.
Was there a question on who would start because of the injury or because of the 3 second half interceptions against Nebraska?
It's the injury mostly.
I think Noah probably would have played more in that game if he had the build up in terms of like the strength in his hand. But I think it was clear that he couldn't throw the ball down the field, and when we needed like to pass in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, because we committed a ton of penalties that game as well. So we were constantly playing behind in terms of down and distance. So we had to throw a lot, and some of the stuff wasn't necessarily on Evan, but he made some boneheaded plays at the same time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. This team sucks. It's bad. I'm being honest. The offense is really bad.
So the defense is very good. We're top 10 in terms of total defense. Yeah. We had the one game against Ohio State where they scored 49 points, but otherwise I think we're averaging like 17 points against us. So the defense is very good. The offense is not. And the big question mark is how much can they improve under a new offensive coordinator in the second half? We have no idea. So
there's always like a little bit of swagger with that new coordinator. Like we saw it against when Indiana played Nebraska with Mickey Joseph and after Bill Bush was gone. But going back to my prediction, I always count on Chuck Campbell, our kicker, just because he's like one of my favorite players to watch, in all honesty, which is kind of a sad thing to say. But I think you give up 17 points a game. I think Indiana's going to come out with a good attitude, and I think they're going to come out kind of excited to play, especially at Rutgers. So I'm going to say I'm going to say 24-13 Indiana. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
That's fair.
A lot of Rutgers fans are not going to be happy to hear that, but yeah, I think it's ultimately going to come down to, I think our defense matches up well against you guys. We have a really good front seven. Wesley Bailey and Aaron Lewis have kind of really come on this season as very disruptive edge rushers. It's going to come down to, can a simplified, sensical offense actually, like if we get to 20 points, I think we win, but who knows if that's actually going to happen.
This game's weird too, because I'll just go into that one. This game's weird. Like it's like the series between Indiana and Rutgers is just so bizarre because Rutgers wins 38-3, Rutgers loses 37-21, Rutgers loses 35-0, then it's 24-17, then it's 41-0, and it's like what is going on here?
Yeah.
So it is a very bizarre series. It's a weird one. I hate to say it. Every time I predict it, I get it wrong. So I'm like on the verge of just predicting Rutgers losing every time. But what do you call it? I think this is going to be like a 20-17 game. Now, I think Indiana pulls this one out because I think their passing offense could tear apart this Rutgers secondary. The secondary's been average when it's supposed to be the strength of the unit, and it seems like it's the defensive line that's the strength of the unit right now. But I think you could flip flop that. You could say 2017 Rutgers, 2017 Indiana.
Yeah.
Right now,
easily,
I think Indiana pulls this one out. New OC, I don't know what Nuns is going to bring to the table, but end of the day, it's still the same players. You can't really change too much scheme wise, so you're probably running majority of the same things. Maybe less Langan, so that might help the offense a bit. Maybe Sam Brown has a coming out party too. He's been pretty good so far. I think you probably should have gave him the job over the past couple weeks since he's been leading the team in rushing, regardless. But I think
if they have a trouble tackling too, that's like Sam Brown was one of the only players making things happen against Iowa and Ohio State. Like he was constantly being met in the backfield, but able to shed the first or second tackle for positive yardage. So if Indiana can't tackle, I see us leaning heavily on him because he's just like 6'1", 220-pound freshman running back who doesn't have great speed, but he's got the ability to make guys miss. So that's kind of what I see them doing. If we can get any lead in the game, I think we just try and like run the game out, honestly.
Yeah. It's going to be on the defense to win this one. Like it's the entire Schiano era so far, 2.0, whatever you want to call it, has been about the defense winning you the games. The offense isn't going to win you a game. I hate to say it, but maybe special teams could throw in a touchdown once in a while. Like, I mean, Cruikshank's back there. He's done it, 6 times already as a punt/kick returner? So it's not unheard of. It's just, I don't know. This is going to be an interesting one. It could go literally either way, and I think both teams are in similar situations where they're still just building.
Yeah, I think you see a decent amount of turnovers, and then I would just look for Indiana to go for quick passes and especially screens. They love that jailbreak screen with DJ Matthews and Emery Simmons, and then just trying to find the running back out of the backfield for like 3-4 yard chunks, and then maybe hit Cam Camper down the field. But I think turnover margin is going to be huge, which that's what lost Indiana the game against Maryland, -3 in that area. But, I expect a lot of turnovers, and I think the defense is going to be flying to the ball for the Hoosiers. But if you mentioned the defensive front, that could make me look really stupid about in the second quarter after a 24-13 prediction. So, but I'm sticking to my guns. So.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to pivot to a little basketball talk. Indiana is predicted to the number one in the Big Ten preseason poll. You guys have the Big Ten preseason player of the year in Trace Jackson Davis. Tell us a little bit about this Indiana team. And Rutgers and Indiana have had a pretty nice basketball rivalry the last 4 or 5 years, even though it's been a little one-sided. But just tell us about this team and why there's a ton of optimism in Bloomington this year on the basketball court.
I think there's a ton of optimism because everyone's expecting everyone on the team to be better than last season. You bring in a 4-star, really quality all-around combo guard, Jalen Hood-Schifino. I think the main question is whether Mike Woodson is going to do the smart thing and start Jalen Hood-Schifino, or if he's going to do the not smart thing and start Miller Kopp, who Indiana fans wouldn't mind if he was like shipped to Kazakhstan to play basketball for the rest of his life. Which I love the guy. He's awesome. Really good defensive player, really good vocal leader, just did not shoot the ball well last year. And then also there's a lot of expectations around Tamar Bates, which I don't really understand because I just don't think he's going to see the floor. But they're expecting just better shooting. Mike Woodson, he's made it clear that his calling card for his teams is going to be defense is going to win you games. And then if you sprinkle in a couple years where they have good quality shooters, they're going to have a chance to win the Big Ten title, and they're going to have a chance to make a deep run in the March Madness. You got a guy like Malik Renew, who Woodson was able to flip from Florida top 10 player, power forward, kind of a carbon copy of Trace Jackson Davis. So the buddy ball with Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson is going to be really, really dangerous. And I think Trace is just going to go off. I think he's going to average probably, what's he going to average? 23 or 24 a game. Just try to overpower everyone. And then if he can mix in 1 or 2 threes a game, which I don't think he should be taking that much volume, but just as a possible threat for defenses to think about, it would just open up so much for this Indiana Hoosier game. So
we actually face each other in our Big Ten opening game on Saturday, December 3rd. So Rutgers announced during Coach Pikel's opening press conference that game's already sold out, which the Rack or Jersey Mike's is obviously a hard place to play, but this is the earliest we're announcing sellouts that I can remember. So we've already got 3 games sold out this season. So that should be a great game. Have you been to any games at Rutgers, or did you go to the Rutgers Indiana game last year in Bloomington by chance?
Yes, I did. And Ron Harper Jr. sent about 10,000 people out crying, and because they thought the season was completely over. So, yeah.
And then you guys had that pretty awesome Cinderella run in the tournament. I mean, I think did you guys make it to Sweet 16? Or barely missed it? Okay.
So we went to the Big Ten tournament, beat Michigan, and you beat Michigan in round 1. And you're like, okay, they might have a chance, but it's still an outside chance unless they beat Illinois. Beat Illinois. So then you're like, okay, it's locked up. We're getting in. Or they're getting in. I need to stop saying that. They're getting in. And then you go against Iowa, and Jordan Bohannon hits like a 40-foot shot from almost half court at the buzzer. And then you're sitting in Gainbridge Fieldhouse watching the selection show, and they go to Dayton, which was a huge surprise.
What it was.
Yeah, and then Michigan gets a good matchup in Indianapolis. I think it was against Colorado State. So they go to Dayton, play a good Wyoming team, emotionally drained, win that game, and then you fly to Portland to play in 2 days after your plane gets delayed because of like equipment issues. And then St. Mary's just stomped all over them. It was like a 30-point blowout. But yeah, so the Rutgers game was interesting because I walked out of that arena saying, okay, well, I'm probably done. Big Ten, I'll go have fun at the Big Ten tournament, watch those games, and then all that. But then I have to drive to Dayton, and then I have to fly to Portland, which Portland is just, it's not a good city. I did not have fun for those 3 days.
Yeah, you're right. I did mix you guys up with Michigan last year. Michigan was the team that had the great run, but the reason I remembered you guys, because we also played in Dayton. We lost a heartbreaker to another team from Indiana, which I'm sure you guys are not big fans of, Notre Dame. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it sounds like the Big Ten's going to be a bit down this year, basketball-wise. Go for it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you guys, what are your thoughts about Dylan Harper? Think Pikel has a chance to get him?
I think it's a heavy Rutgers lean. I know, like, Indiana threw an offer. Duke, Kansas just threw an offer. He's still got a long way to go. He's going to take other visits, but the only campus he's been to is basically Rutgers. And he's been there, 10, 12 times at this point? I think that's pretty much locked up. Like, off the record, I think it's, locked up, but I don't think they're going to do anything. Like, he's still going to rack up offers. He's still going to do the AAU circuit and all that good stuff. So, yeah, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, you guys are one of his favorites, though. heard you guys mention time after time in terms of his recruitment.
Yeah. I put stuff in the forums about him because I went to Peach Jam, and I just keep on saying this kid is so good. He just cannot miss anything. He's a threat to score every possession. And then I'm getting these Indiana fans come back at me like, Ron Harper Jr. doesn't like Indiana. Dylan Harper's not going to go there. Mike Woodson's wasting his time. I'm going to be like, I don't think he's going to worry about Ron Harper Jr.'s feelings about Indiana when he could possibly have a future lottery pick. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Now, Mike's right, though. Indiana has been mentioned a ton. Like, it's interesting because, like, you think after everything. Yeah, but he's putting in some serious work, it seems like.
Yeah, Heiko got a lot of shit from our fan base for like not really recruiting at a high level, despite the fact that he's like developing players at like an elite level. So when those recruiting rankings weren't like super high, people were getting all testy, but all those guys have really developed nicely. Even the guys who aren't like starters or useful. But recently, he started to really kind of be in it with a lot of top guys. Like we got a top 30 commitment in the 23 class and Gavin Griffiths. We're the favorite for Ron Harper Jr. in 24. This guy Ace Bailey out of Georgia, who's visited Rutgers several times, continually mentioned them as one of his favorites. But I did want to kind of talk between our schools. Like, we're not really like super Rutgers fans aren't really like super NIL crazy, or we don't really have many big donors who kind of support getting kids on campus. What's Indiana basketball like in terms of the NIL world? Are you guys doing pretty well there? I assume you are. Keeping a guy like Trace Jackson Davis in for his senior year.
So the NIL stuff it's funny because there'll be a lot of schools and they'll have like programs set up to connect with businesses. And then these guys will sign like big contracts with businesses like CJ Stroud did Express, and I think another Ohio State player did Chipotle, just got big contracts. The Bloomington model is you get all of your very rich alumni who eat, breathe, and sleep Indiana basketball. And then you create a entity called Hoosiers for Good, which is for charity. And then you pay these players to go do charitable like stuff around the state. It's like gun violence, it's recycling, boys and girls clubs and stuff like that. So you're basically just giving them money to go do this stuff, and it's kind of like an NIL collective. Which the interesting thing is Mark Cuban's an Indiana alum, so everyone's just expecting him to just throw millions at people to get recruits here, and he hasn't really done that yet. Like people are blaming him for Bronny not having Indiana in his like Final Five. So, but
aren't you guys in Adidas school though?
Yeah, exactly. So, which he just signed with Nike as a high school senior. So,
jeez. So you're assuming? You said you're assuming Mike Cuban's going to start donating soon.
I do think so because he's been on campus a couple times this year, and I'd pay good money to be a fly on the wall with the meetings he's having here with people just trying to get money, because I think in the past he didn't really have a reason to donate because no one liked Archie Miller, but now that Mike Woodson's here and Mike Woodson's cool and he probably has a connection with Mike Woodson given they've been in the NBA for so long. I would think it would be trending in the direction that Mark Cuban would be getting more involved with NIL.
Interesting.
Which is an endless pit of money. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how NIL evolves over time, because it was basically like the Wild West, and you had like the rogue outlaws who just started coming in shooting hot, and now it's starting to form a more like legitimate model. And I don't know how many of the Cowboys from the first couple years of NIL are going to be able to last in the model that seems to be being adopted by a lot of schools. And who knows if the NCAA is actually going to enforce any of their own rules, because they probably are at the lowest point in terms of their power that they've ever been. But
you know what? I got one more for you, Keegan. I forgot all about this. We were meant to ask it before. Jack Tuttle, what happened there, and is he actually just bad, or like because Rutgers might need a quarterback in the portal this offseason?
He's not bad. I don't think. I I don't think he's been able to play with good offensive lines in the past.
So he's got experience with that. It's good for Rutgers.
Very, very much so. In all honesty, I'd expect him to go back out west. He's from California, and the interesting thing is that Ohio State actually found, was it Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson? One of the two. I think it was Chris
Wilson's
Olave.
from Texas. Yeah.
Yes, so it was Olave. Ohio State found Olave when they were recruiting Tuttle out of California. And then Tuttle ends up coming to Indiana, and he's a backup to Michael Penix, and then he's a backup to Connor Bazelak, and now he's in the transfer portal. But he's killed it, really. He's grinded. He's been an awesome teammate. Walt Bell said that he'd hire him in a second if he wanted to get into coaching.
Wow.
It was interesting. I was sitting in the press box against Michigan, and it had been a 3-and-out because 5 defensive linemen had gotten straight through and hit Bazelak. And the offensive line comes off the field, and they're just defeated. And then Darren Hiller, who was recently fired, just sat in front of them, and he's just giving them all attitude, just really, really pissed about what happened. And Tuttle comes over and calms everyone down and, tries to reassure him and, motivate him a little bit. But I think he'll find a home. I think he'll be like a gap year QB. I guess that's how you could describe it. Maybe you'll have a good recruit, true freshman come in, learn from him, and then I would expect to see him as a GA eventually in the next couple of years, and then go into coaching.
I mean, Washington needs a quarterback next year.
Oh my God.
His favorite OC, Nick Sheridan. That'd be interesting.
Hey, be interesting. It's not unheard of.
All right, well, Keegan, we really appreciate you coming on and joining us. What do you want to plug anything before we sign off here?
TheHoosier.com. I have 2 articles coming out today. One about Mike Woodson dropped, what was it, an hour and a half ago maybe, and then another one about just the football team's attitude through the just have than we know it, dude. So anything. Get on and read Indiana and so it's a lot of fun.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off. So stick around because the video